رب السماوات ورب الأرض رب العالمين وله الكبرياء في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. الحمد لله الذي بنعمته تتم الصالحات. ربنا لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إلى ربي ولك الحمد بعد الرضا. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيد الأولين والآخرين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك الحق المبين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله وأمين على وحيه. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, all praise and glory and thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everything we have, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِّعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. And all our needs are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, for forgiveness, for protection, for health, for everything. Even for your rizq, for your provision. Ibrahim alayhi salam told his people, فَابْتَغُوا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الرِّزْقَ. فَابْتَغُوا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الرِّزْقَ. Yes, you need to work hard, but keep in mind that it's coming eventually. It's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your business or through your company or through any other channels. The two verses that we recite on Jumu'ah, they are really so powerful. One is challenging us to be mindful of Allah as His due. اتقوا الله حق تقاته. No matter how pious you are, no matter how close to Allah you are, no matter how good your character, your worship, you always have to keep pushing yourself. Why? To reach that standard, as is His due. حق تقاته. Which nobody will reach. We can only hope to get closer. We can only hope to get closer. But we should always try and never settle for anything. Always try to get closer. And the second verse, it's very powerful. Always check what you have invested and saved with Allah. Let every soul check what you have prepared for tomorrow. Because in one moment, 1 second, everything that we care about in this life becomes useless. That's your children, and so they start dividing it. That's not yours anymore. The only thing that becomes important and yours is that account. The ones in which you invested and saved with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the only thing that matters. Everything else that you are being busy with becomes irrelevant for you. So keep that in mind. وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسًا مَا قَدَّمَتْ وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّن خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ. Whatever you send forth with Allah, you will find it. And it's going to be multiplied, inshallah. Dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we're continuing with the series that we started, in which we try to answer 3 fundamental questions that I believe should be the questions that should be in our mind all the time and in our discussions, so that our discussion does not become vain talk, just talking. It's these fundamental questions: why our situation does not change. Why? I mean, some people will tell you that when they go back to their countries, they hardly find anything that has changed. Even little things in the street, there is a problem. They find it exactly so stagnant. Stagnation beyond imagination. So why is this? Why the situation is not changing? Why the attempts to change it have failed? Why? We have very serious attempts. People who are very sincere, put a lot of efforts, cost a lot of sacrifices, very heavy price. Very heavy price to kick out the colonization, to end colonization. Very heavy price. People worked so hard to bring Muslims back to Islam, thinking that's the issue, that would solve it. Didn't. Things paid heavy price. The most recent was Syria. Huge price to get rid of dictatorship. Hopefully, this is new, but we're talking about the past experience. It did not work. I mean, there is a heavy price is being paid in something you think is going to do it. You succeed, you achieve the goal, and then wait for the change, and it doesn't come. So that's not something that we should take lightly. That's a puzzle. We have to, and then of course the main question, eventually, how we can make it work. How can we make it happen? I'm going to summarize quickly what we discussed so far in a couple of minutes. One, we talked about the right approach for change. There are steps, there is approach, you apply it, recipe. You apply it, you can hope, inshallah, for change. You don't apply it, things are not going to change. Things do not work with wishes. This world is governed by rules, and these rules are not biased toward Muslims. These rules, they're going to apply to us, we like it or we don't like it. They apply to the Prophet, to the prophetic community, was defeated in the Battle of Uhud, and they were told that things are not going to be, you're not going to be victorious because you're Muslims. You violated certain rules, you pay the price. This is the language in Quran that was addressed to the prophetic community. Who are we to expect that things will work for us just like that? It's not. So this approach simply, one, proper diagnosis. Understand your reality beyond and deep understanding, in-depth understanding. Two, have the correct history, narration. Three, have the right vision, clear, inspiring vision. And for community and society, it has to be shared vision. It has to be said, so that it can produce that unity and that mobilization. It's a compass that should guide you. Where are we heading? Why this is important? So that we can stop. We don't stop halfway. We don't celebrate and just by achieving the first goal. No. Destination has to be always. And then it is important because it will protect us from deviation. When you have a clear destination in your mind, one, you're not going to stop before reaching it. Two, you will not deviate. Nobody can deviate you because you know where you're heading. Four, good, the right strategy and roadmap to get you there. Because you may have all of this right, but you can take the wrong direction or the wrong route. You're not going to get there. So give a roadmap or strategy or plan. Five, execution. Because all of this can be right, and then if you are lousy in execution, it's not going to happen. And then next is, while executing, documentation, assessment and evaluation, accountability, and flexibility to make adjustments. Documentation, and then assessment, regular taqeem, what went wrong, what went right, who did what, etc. Accountability, holding people accountable, those who take decisions, that's responsibility. Nobody forced you to be leader. You chose to be leader, you take responsibility for your decision. You be held accountable. And then adjustments. Be flexible. If you find yourself in the wrong track, be ready to cut your losses or to make adjustments. Don't be stubborn. We have problems in all these departments. Make no mistake about it from the beginning. That's why things are not changing. We have problems in the diagnosis. We have the wrong reading of our history, very flawed historical narration. When it comes to the vision, we don't have a clear vision. That's why whenever we achieve something, we call it victory, and we celebrate and we become complacent, etc. Starting from superficial and partial diagnosis, that's why the treatment did not solve the problem, because the diagnosis was very superficial and partial. That diagnosis was based on wrong historical narration that can be summarized in one sentence. Majority of Muslims, unfortunately, take it for granted that we have been in great shape and Islam has been in great shape until the collapse of the Ottoman Khilafah, which is totally wrong. Totally wrong, make no sense. Very flawed, very contradictory. Why you collapsed? Why you became colonized overnight? Things do not happen overnight. So that historical narration, we just have to get rid of it. And we talked about the alternative. The alternative, how we lost our ways long time ago, many centuries. It starts with something, unfortunately, an accident. It was designed like this, nobody wanted like this, but Muslims at a certain point in time They absorbed two superpowers, two empires in the span of few months, and they have no capacity to handle that, to manage. So we have that mismatch, because when you do that, there are people who come with conspiracy, there are people who will be hypocrites, and you have no capacity to manage this. So that mismatch put us in an exit. It went into civil war, fitna. It went after that into dynasty rule to stop the bloodshed, and that remained for 13 centuries, 12 centuries or more. And then it led to stopping ijtihad, because that type of ruling does not like the true Islam. They want Islam that is reduced and Islam that is superficial. So Islam was stripped from its sense of mission, of maqasid, and it is left this obsolete Islam that we have inherited. Need to accept, I believe, need to accept this narration. Nothing wrong, it just happened, and we need to, once we accept it, and we accept that the true Islam was lost long time ago, alhamdulillah, it is still, we have the Quran preserved, so we can always extract a fresh understanding and relevant and inspiring understanding of Islam, but not the one that we inherited. The one that we inherited passed through those centuries of stagnation and oppression, and it came in bad shape, very bad shape. Even though on the surface it looks like the original, it's like any copied material. On the surface it looks like the original, but in terms of performance there is no comparison. Accepting that, and accepting the fact that these centuries have left a lot of damage on the Muslim mind and on the Muslim personality and on our understanding of Islam. So that any attempt to change has to deal with that damage, because there is a lot of damage that was caused when people lived for centuries under that kind of ruling, suppressed and treated as subjects, not as citizens, not free to think, etc. You expect that their personality will be mutilated and their minds will be mutilated. And we can see it. We can see Muslims nowadays, they love denial. We love denial. We love excuses and justifying failure. We love to blame our failure on others. We love to call failure success. It's a lot of damage. We think we have this wishful thinking. We don't distinguish between what we dream of and the reality. So there is a confusion. It's called wishful thinking. Tafkir bil-tamanni. Inshallah, things will work out. We are in good shape, etc. So much damage there. And then, as I was talking before the Jumu'ah, this idea of not accepting different opinion and not being able to have any fruitful discussion, because everybody is spokesperson of Islam. So if you disagree with them, you're kafir. Somebody is spokesperson of Palestine, you disagree with them on anything, then you are Zionist. Someone is the spokesperson of Syrian revolution, you disagree with them, then you are Bashar. It's terrible. It's terrible. We are in terrible shape, and we're going nowhere with this mindset of with us or against us. I can differ with you, and I'm better Muslim than you. That's very possible. I can differ with you on what's going on, and I'm caring much more than you about the Syrian revolution and its success. Even though I differ with you I can differ with you on some decisions, and I care about Palestine and the Palestinian more than you. So nobody should appoint themselves spokesperson of anything. You just have an opinion. You are not guardian, and you're not spokesperson. That's one of the main damage that happened. Of course, in addition to the fact that we became so okay with dictatorship. It doesn't bother us anymore. Why? Because there is a whole fiqh behind it. There is a fiqh called حكم المتغلب شرعي. Fiqh that was built, and that everybody who imposed themselves is legitimate. We have that fiqh, and we have a history. 13 centuries that we were living under dictatorship. So it became normal. Very normal. So easy for someone, coup d'etat, will come and impose themselves, and we are okay with it. Next day we go back to our work, and we're happy, and then you'll find people who start praising and start turning the person into an idol. etc. So that's also another big damage that we really have to think as citizens and insist on this idea of justice and the idea of transparency. We don't want to be ruled by anything else except the way the Khulafa Rashidin. And this time, it's only democratic system, otherwise it's a dictatorship. You can call it whatever you want. If these elements are not there, it is a dictatorship. Even if you tell me the best speeches in the world. If transparency is not there, accountability is not there, it is not by merit. People take position by merit, not by the tribe. If there is no leadership by consent, then it is not democracy. And if it is not democracy, then it is dictatorship. So that's one of the damage that. When it comes to the vision, we said that it is mentioned clearly in Quran, that you are an ummah that is expected to be a model community and leading community. You should never settle for anything less than that. Don't tell me because we made this achievement, we're good. We are better than yesterday, or we're better. There is another country that is worse than us, so we're good. As long as there is somebody behind us, then we are good. Or as long that we are better than, maybe yesterday was terrible. So if you are a little better than yesterday, it doesn't mean that we should keep that in mind. That we need, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be pleased with us unless we are trying to resume our role to be a model community and a leading community. خير أمة وأمة وسط. That's the position, that's the place that Allah reserved for us. We should not settle for anything less. Yes, we went situation became very bad. Yes, we have to be happy with every improvement, but celebrate it for a day and then resume the journey. Next, it's always the next level, the next stage. That's it. This is gone. It's in the pocket. Let's try to consolidate it. And then next. Keep doing that until we reach that place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved for us. So we talked about that historical narration, which I believe makes much more sense than the one that is prevalent. Why we continued all this time? Because the state was strong, but the society was weakening. State remained strong, society was weakening. And there was no serious competition. There was other parts of the world were worse. That's why when Europe woke up and we collapsed, almost suddenly. Why? Because things were in the working already. And I mentioned the example of Soviet Union. One day before it collapsed, it was a very strong country, very powerful military. One day before it collapsed, but it was weakening inside. So things do not happen overnight. Why we had those achievements? We mentioned that these achievements were in spite of the system, not because of the system. And many of those scientists and scholars were persecuted. So we cannot, every now and then we have a Khalifa or a ruler who is enlightened who will promote this thing. But the next Khalifa will come and persecute the same scientists and the same scholars. So there was no serious competition. And we have to accept the reality that our history was swinging between dictatorship and chaos. Read it carefully. Don't read it from those books that makes it everything rosy. Read credible history books and you will find that we have stability with the Dawla Umayyad state becomes weak. We enter into a situation of chaos and civil war, and then another family comes, settle things down. The moment becomes weak, we go into chaos and civil war, and then another state. Every time there is a strong ruler who will come and impose themselves, and then that's unfortunately our history. Since that moment of setback from the Khilafah Rashida, when we were way ahead of our time, when we established a system that is that the West discovered it and developed it only 12 centuries later. This democratic system was already implemented at that time. Shura, people choose their leader, they hold them accountable, transparency, you name it. So those centuries inflicted tremendous damage on the Muslim mind and Muslim personality. They and to our understanding of Islam, and then the true Islam was lost a long time ago. You know, nowadays people say that, for example, a country like Syria, let's take that as an example, it was, a lot of damage was caused by the dictatorship that was gone. Why? Because it is a hukm ayah, it's a dictatorship, but a family ruling. But people do not pay attention that we accepted that for centuries. So what do you expect if 50 years have done so much damage in Syria, and the Syrian people and the Syria as a country? What do you expect 12th century to do to people? But it was hukm al-ayah, so it was exactly the same. So just keep in mind, multiply those 50 years, the damage, tremendous damage, happened to every Muslim countries because of dictatorship that lasted for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Imagine the same thing happened for 12 centuries, what kind of damage will be inflicted. So we need to find our way, because when you are lost, no matter how much you drive, no matter how much you move, you're not going to get it. Especially if you don't have clear destination. The first thing when you lose your way, when you go into a wrong exit, is to find your way back so that you can resume your journey. And we have to find that point, otherwise there is no point in moving or driving where we are still in a state of loss. We have to rediscover the true Islam that was lost. We have a great religion, very inspiring, very empowering, but it was damaged over the centuries. We have to go to rediscover that true Islam. Any change, that's number 2. Number 3, any change that does not tackle the damage, it is bound to fail. Any change that does not tackle the damage that is inflicted on the Muslim minds and Muslim personality, it is bound to fail. Why? Because it's like a surgeon who will close the wound without cleaning it. There is no point. You're going to have to clean it before you can. And subhanAllah, now we have a rule. We have a golden rule. We all know it. We all say it. But unfortunately, we are trying to defy it or try to work around it. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. I wish that we really master this verse. Allah will not change the conditions of people until themselves change. Until they start thinking differently, behaving differently, then their conditions will change. Time and again, we have been trying to change our conditions, but without ourselves changing. We want to get better results, but with the same mindset, with the same behavior, with the same everything. Never worked and never will. So let's work with follow. There is a condition. Quran is putting a condition. Your situation and condition will change only when you do. So don't try to change them with the same mindset and the same behavior, because Quran tells you that's not going to work. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. There is a golden saying, I think it was made by Einstein, that you cannot change a situation or fix a problem with the same mindset that created it. You can't. There is a mindset that created the problem. You're coming with the same mindset to fix it, it's not going to happen. And that's again something that we're trying. It is about time to accept that unless we start thinking differently, unless our understanding of the deen changes, unless our understanding of life changes, thinking differently, behave differently, your conditions will change. Without that, you are wasting your time. Damage, as I mentioned, the way we're thinking, the behavior. We all know, unfortunately, that Muslim societies are not really in good shape, even in akhlaq, even in manners and interaction. We are not in the best of shapes. In addition to the lack of sense of mission, people have very low aspirations, very low ambitions, limited ambitions. As soon as we achieve something, that's it. We think that the mission accomplished, we are already there. In addition to wishful thinking,
in addition to become so emotional that one speech or part of speech or one sentence will take us in this route, another sentence will take us in a different route. So fragile intellectually and emotionally that we can easily be fooled and deceived. Anybody can tell us a couple of things and then they make us go right or left or north or south. Mental fragility, emotional fragilities, etc. In addition to this idea of making dictatorship legitimate, that's something we have to get rid of. Even if the dictator is your brother, is from your party, from your tribe, you have to reject it because it is bad. So it is not, it depends. No, it does not depend. And don't say that it's okay to accept dictatorship as long as we have a reasonable life. No, it should be rejected. Dictatorship and corruption and injustice should be rejected, and that's not optional. So it is not like, as long if the dictatorship is from my party or from my people or from my sect, then it is okay. No. And if they leave us some room, if they're not really very brutal, they leave me alone, I can live, I can get a reasonable salary and live, then I can live with it. No, we cannot, we should not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be pleased with us if we accept injustice. Quran praises those who reject injustice. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَهُمُ الْبَغْيُ هُمْ يَنْتَصِرُونَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So that fiqh of حكم المتغلب, حكم المتسلط, that whoever comes to power, they are legitimate, which the scholars, unfortunately, that alliance or partnership between rulers and scholars established, we have to get rid of it. Believe it or not, if we rediscover the true Islam and embraced as a mission, a lot of things will be fixed and fall in place. Because this deen, the true Islam, produced great success stories in the worst conditions that you can think of. And we are in much better conditions nowadays compared to the people in Mecca and in the Arabian Peninsula at that time. Poor, short in numbers in the resources, tribal societies in the desert, very unfavorable conditions. We are in much better situation nowadays. That same Islam can produce great success stories and can make a lot of these scattered pieces of the puzzle fall in place. We need to do that, and we need to resume ijtihad and free our minds. The Muslim minds nowadays are crippled. Why crippled? Because there is intimidation. Because as I mentioned, you dare to disagree, you're kafir. You dare to disagree, you are a traitor. So people they don't even want to think. It's easier to go with the flow. So let me open social media in the morning, see where is the flow going, and just follow it. Either say the same thing that people say, or keep quiet. We're going nowhere with that. We need to free the Muslim mind, unfreeze ijtihad, unfreeze intellectual creativity, critical thinking. Shouldn't accept anything for granted. Always ask why and how, and convince me, and what's your evidence. Raise a whole generation with this critical thinking and with this minds that are free and think independently, not find where the flow is going and follow it. Again, when we do that, then we're going to fulfill the condition for change. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of people until they change themselves. Change our thinking, change our understanding of Islam. Stop trying to change the conditions without us changing. Never work, never will. So there is no point in trying it. The verse tells us this. So jumping to change the conditions with the same thinking and the same, it's not going to work. That's what the Quran says. When you build, you don't start from the roof. Start from the foundations. So that's why every time you start from the roof, it collapses. You need to start from the foundation. The other issues that we need to address is that, again, as I mentioned earlier, if it was not for that setback, just let's use our imagination. If Muslims took that system of Khulafa Rashidin and turned into institutions. All the principles, they turned them into institutions. We wouldn't have to deal with these dictatorships nowadays, dictatorial regimes. We didn't have to have those centuries of oppression and stagnation and dictatorship. We were probably in a very different situation by now if it was not for that setback. It's never too late. It took humanity 12 centuries to develop a system that was already there. This democratic system that was developed was already implemented in the early days of Islam, but it needed to institutionalize. Instead of institutionalizing it, we relapsed into the dynasty rule and family rule. The question that we won't have time to address it today, but inshallah we'll address it next time, is why the West and Europe, who found themselves in the same situation or worse. In the 16th century and 17th, they were in much worse situation. Why they were able to succeed in their renaissance and we were not. Why they were able to change their situation completely and to start the scientific revolution and now the huge and widening gap between us and not. That's a question that inshallah maybe we'll start it today and continue next time. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونتوب إليه. نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. My dear respected brothers and sisters, in Islam, Europe and the West in the 16th, 17th centuries, they were in a terrible situation. They had a system that is much worse than ours. The monarchy in Europe was much worse. And then they had the church stifling creativity or thinking and etc., dominating people and fooling and deceiving people, total religious stagnation and political stagnation. Very similar to the situation that we inherited, but they dealt with it in a very different way. Rather than saying our history was rosy and great and let's try to, and it was just a minor accident that we need to fix, no. And the starting point was what? Starting point, they applied the rule. They applied the verse. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. The starting point in Europe was new ideas. It was an intellectual revolution. There were thinkers who started publishing new ideas about politics and etc. And there was the Reformation. There is a fresh understanding of religion. That's what they have done, and that's what resulted in the result in what you see. Unfortunately, we inherited a similar situation, or ours is better. But we dealt with it in a very different way, and that's why the consequences are very different. Come back to this, inshallah, in more details next time. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا وتوفنا من راض عنا واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا واجعل خير أعمالنا خواتمها وخير أيامنا من نلقاك. ربنا ارحم والدينا كما ربونا صغارا وارحم موتانا وجميع موتى المسلمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد.